So good job. There are, people come up with some pretty creative excuses why not to go to church. Maybe you have some of your own. I found some that some pastors around the country have shared, and these are real life ones. I'll just say thank you that I've never heard any of these, but these are some real life excuses why people have missed church. One person said, I couldn't come that day because I just couldn't get the lid off the peanut butter. I mean, that was really, I'm like, well, you could bring the jar in and we'll pray over it. Maybe some people here could help you or something. By the way, I wonder if it was Skippy brand because they skipped church. Bad. That's the real reason we don't come, because these cheesy jokes are getting worse. Here was a real excuse. Only in Florida. Only in Florida. Someone really came. It's kind of a tragedy, but also this is funny. But so they couldn't come to church. They said, an alligator ate my dog. There you go. I know, sad, right? I'll give you permission right now. If an alligator eats your dog here in San Diego and you miss church, you have full permission. It's totally okay, although we'd love to pray for you. Here's one. One guy said, I can't come to church because both my girlfriends go there. Oh. Yeah, I'm not going to touch that one. I don't know. I think he needs some church maybe in his life. Here's one. I don't go to church because the worship leader pulls up his pants too often and it's distracting to me. So there's a reason. I just want to say thank you for Ryan. And we're just thankful for Ryan. He's great. He doesn't distract us in ways. All right. One more. One person said, I can't come because my wife cooked bacon for breakfast and then our whole family smelled like bacon. If that's you, you are welcome to church. We love the smell of bacon here, so we don't mind. I think that's a great reason to come. I think about, I don't know what it was for you as a kid. I know some of us in here really have kind of never grew up around church, and maybe your first time walking in was here. I love that. I love meeting you. We're honored, humbled when that happens. Some of us grew up going, and then by the time you got out on your own, you're like, I'm free. I don't have to go anymore. Mom and Dad aren't making me. Some of you have gone your whole life, and you love it. So we have the whole spectrum here. For me, grew up as a kid. Didn't totally mind going, but the problem was we often went to Saturday night mass. So I'd be like out playing with my friends, and I'm all hot and sweaty and all this stuff. And parents like, all right, time to come in. You had to put on dress clothes at like 4 p.m. so we could get to 5 o'clock mass. And then we didn't have kids ministry, so you just had to sit there in the pew with your parents, be very quiet and not move. I did not like doing that. I was so bummed. Like, I just want this to get over. I want to go back and play with my friends. It was just very boring as a kid to have to sit there, just being honest. I think that's part of why I don't mind when I see kids running around our church here. I'm like, you go, kids. That's awesome. Because I want them to have fun at church in a way that I didn't get to. By the way, our kids ministry here upstairs, most of you haven't seen it, now has a trampoline in it. And I think if my church had a trampoline, maybe I would have been more willing to go. I'm just saying, you should be jealous of the other kids that get to go here. No, I want to try to do something hard today. I want to try to completely redefine how you view church and why you would go. Whether you're someone who comes all the time and you're like, no, I'm good. I'm already in. I love it. I want to help you see, how do you get the most out of it? What does God want to do in you? If you're someone that's like, yeah, I try to come when I can make it, when I get up in time, that kind of thing, I want you to see, man, God just really has a lot for you. And if you're brand new to this whole thing and you're like, okay, I don't get it. It seems like church is something I'm supposed to do, but I don't think I get why. I want to really help you understand the why. I think the motivations of why we go means everything. And so we're going to talk in this series, In Common, what God actually meant for us to experience together by being together as a church family, how to experience all that God meant for it to be. So it's not just another kind of item on my to-do list, a religious obligation, that God meant for us to get so much more out of it. By the way, we have a kind of a path for you to grow spiritually around here. Different churches do it in different ways. We don't really do it through membership. We don't have the idea of, okay, now you're a member, now you're not. We're just all here on this shared spiritual journey. And we have kind of 3 practices. We're meant to keep growing deeper and deeper and deeper in. The 3 B's, we call them: begin, belong, be. And we just like to keep things simple. So begin, belong, be. Now the temptation is to view that as a checklist. All right, I came to church, joined a life group, I served at a thing. Okay, I'm done, I'm in. But it's not a checklist. It's not just more religious stuff for you to do. This is experiences and practices I'm meant to grow deeper and deeper in. I kind of think about it as like a slinky, if you remember those. If you don't, then I just sound really old right now. But if you remember a slinky, like a spring, and you think about these 3 practices, you're meant to keep circling around these same 3 while also growing deeper and deeper into them. So beginning your week in worship, you kind of show up here and like, all right, I'm doing it. But as you grow deeper in it, you learn to experience more while you're here. We'll talk about today. Learn to begin your day in worship through different spiritual practices. So it's about growing deeper. Life groups, you can start by going to a life group. You can grow deeper in that experience as you learn to get accountability partners and learn to just kind of open up, be authentic. Of course, serving, we can grow deeper and deeper in. So that's part of why we want to talk about it. Notice the first one, as we'll talk about today, begin the week in worship. We don't say begin the week by going to church. Okay, to use that phrase. We're just always trying to remind ourselves that church isn't a place we go. It's not a building. It's not an institution. It's not an organization. And it's not an event. It's actually a family. That's what God meant for it to be in the Bible. That's how that word is used. It's a spiritual family. And families gather. Families gather. That's part of why COVID was hard, when they couldn't gather in person. I hope over the summer you've gotten to gather with some different family. I just gathered with some of mine a week ago. I had to brave the LA traffic because my brother's live in Encino, but it's always worth it to get to gather together with them. And so families gather, and there's a lot that God wants us to get out of gathering together. So again, I want to talk about why, because I think the wrong motivation ends up just not lasting very long. And I know some of us have experienced all different kinds of reasons why we end up going to church. Maybe sometimes we think it's earning me brownie points with God. He loves me more when I go, and he's mad at me when I don't. By the way, not true. Not true. Sometimes our motivation is just guilt. Guilt trips. Sometimes some of us have parents or grandparents, professional guilt trip givers. And so maybe even as an adult, when you talk to them on the phone, they ask, are you going to church? You're like, there it is again. So maybe you just go out of trying to make others happy, parents or grandparents happy. Maybe you go just to try to make your pastor happy. That's not why you go, right? If you do, thank you, because it really does. But that's not a good motivation. Sometimes we go, it's like, this is like, my religious obligation. It's what we're supposed to do if we're a Christian. Or sometimes we kind of think of church as like Spirit Mart. I just go there when I got something, I'm in need, and so let me pick up something at Spirit Mart, kind of get what I need. Okay, I'm good for now. I'll revisit and come back when I need something. I think the problem with any of those motivations is they just don't last that long, I mean, I don't know about for you, like if I'm motivated by guilt or just out of fear, that only lasts so long. I'll do it for a little bit, but eventually you just fade away from it. And so I want to talk about why God really meant for us to gather, what we're meant to get out of it, so that you can experience what he has for you. And I love this just short little story. Short story. It really is my favorite description of what God meant for a spiritual family, a church, to be really anywhere in the Bible. And in this short little thing, we're actually going to dig into it all of the next 3 weeks. So you'll get to know it pretty well. I love this description. When I first started here, it was 8 years ago at Newbreak OB. I said, someone's got to go sacrifice for Jesus and live by the beach and try to do church there. I'll answer the call, God. And so came here and I said, God, I just want you to build Acts 2 kind of church here. So this really formed just everything I'm trying to do. I just want it to look like what God was doing here. So excited for you to see this one if you've never read it. And here's the setup for it. Pretty cool. So picture what these guys are facing. This is, the Gospels tell us, of course, the story of Jesus' life. And Book of Acts is the sequel. So Jesus lived, he died on the cross, he rose again, he ascended into heaven for the final time. In Acts 1:8, he says, as I'm heading into heaven, here's my mission. I leave for all of you, all humans who will ever come and decide to follow me. Your mission is go be my witnesses. Show people what God is like. Tell them what he's like. Show them what he's like. And I'll be back one day. So he leaves everyone with that mission. So you picture, we got all the disciples here. It's just a small band of followers that Jesus has. And all of a sudden, he's not here. And they're like, all right, he gave us this mission. What do we do now? He's not with us physically. we got to figure out how to go live this out. But Jesus doesn't leave them alone. At the beginning of Acts chapter 2, read this great story we don't have time for. The Holy Spirit pours out on them. All of a sudden, they're able to do things they never were able to do before, and they start to just go be God's witnesses. And Acts 2 tells us that there are people from, it mentions 15 different countries. We won't try to pronounce all the names. It mentions 15 different territories at the time that people are all in town from. It's like a big gathering, so really it's kind of like having a little taste of kind of the whole known world is right here in this one spot. And the Holy Spirit's pouring out on them, and all these people from 15 different countries, different languages are like, what's going on? What are these people doing? And then, really cool, Apostle Peter stands up in front of all of them and just gives this great sermon. And actually, his whole sermon's recorded in Acts 2. We're not going to read it today, but you can go read it, and it's pretty powerful. He talks about this is who Jesus really is. And then, at the end of his sermon, it says 3,000 people decided to follow Jesus that day. I've never had that happen at the end of one of my sermons, but it would be pretty cool. And so 3,000 people that day. Bible scholars would say, sadly, most of the time when they counted back then, they were only counting the men, which is not very fair. But so that means probably not just 3,000 men, possibly 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 people when you count women and children, all decided to follow Jesus that day. Pretty awesome day. Also, that's a big new challenge. What do we do about this? Imagine if here, all of a sudden, 3,000 people around OB and Point Loma decide we're going to follow Jesus and we're all going to start coming to the same church. What would we do? I mean, first thing we got to do is build a big old parking structure out there. We're going to tear down the new playground and go like 12 stories up because we need a lot more parking for 3,000 people. And sorry to my staff, but we're going to have like 15 services a weekend if we're going to fit everybody in here. But, right? So like, what would you do? All of a sudden, you got all these brand new people. They all want to know more about Jesus. And back then, they didn't even have buildings and pastors and what do you do? How do you help these people somehow be connected, somehow grow in their faith and not just kind of lose it all? Well, here's what they did. Verse 42, they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe at the many signs and wonders performed by the apostles. All the believers were together, and they had everything in common. They sold property and possessions that they had, like having a bunch of garage sales, to give to anyone who had need. Every day, they continued to meet together in the temple courts. Also, they broke bread in their homes, and they ate together. We love doing that here. They ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And I love how it ends. It says, and the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. Man, it wasn't just 3,000. They're growing every day. More and more people coming. And they're not streaming any of it online, and they don't have any postcards to send out or billboards or anything. It's just people are watching this community of people doing life together and like, what's going on over there? I want a piece of that. I want to know what that's like. And they're just drawn in naturally. That's what we hope happens for you. You don't have to do awkward evangelism. Just live out your faith in people and let them just be naturally drawn in to who God is and opportunities to talk with them. And so people are drawn in to God. They didn't just all decide to follow Jesus that day. It says, by the way, they decided 3,000 followed him and were baptized that day. That's the first thing people did when they followed Jesus. That's why we value baptism here. And again, we'd love to celebrate it with you. But they didn't all just say, okay, I believe, baptize. Okay, everyone, now just go back to your homes. Just return to your homes. You think about, we do that after like a shared experience. Like if you've been to any, say, like Padres games this year, they're like 1-5 at the ones I've gone to. So I think it's my fault when they lose. But if you go, it's a great experience. You may even like high five some strangers. Like, wasn't that cool? Then we all get in our cars, go home, and never see each other again. Right? But they didn't want to do that here. They knew, hey, if we're going to grow in our faith, we can't just go back to our lives by ourselves. We gotta stay connected. So they created this rhythm of gathering together around their faith. They got in this regular rhythm. Notice part of their rhythm was they met daily. So you're welcome. You get by with only once a week. So, I mean, that's pretty good. Just saying. No, they do it daily. And remember, we read that it's like in the temple courts and in people's homes. That's what we try to do. We gather together in a shared space like this. Also have life groups and different things going in people's homes. But they continued. We read that word in the passage too. They were devoted. That's the same Greek word for continued, for devoted. It means they were committed to doing it and not growing tired of it. And so they committed to this rhythm of doing this. If you fast forward later in Acts, all the way to Acts chapter 20, and churches are starting to get planted everywhere. And as they start, they're creating a rhythm as well. It says on the first day of the week, they came together. They broke bread together. They heard, in this case, the Apostle Paul teach. Now notice, Paul kept talking until midnight. So again, you're welcome. I mean, I know sometimes you're like, oh, that message is going a little long. I've never kept you here till midnight. So I'm just saying, don't tempt me. I'm a late night guy. I will keep talking till midnight, but I have never kept you much past 12:15. But anyway, not till midnight. No, but I love that because you just see this intentional rhythm. You know how important rhythm is in our lives. Rhythm is so important to music, of course. I don't know if you have rhythm or if your spouse would say that you have rhythm. That's who we should really ask. I don't have rhythm. I'm jealous because my dad's a drummer. My youngest brother is a drummer. And all three of my kids are great musicians, drummers and piano and bass and everything else. So it like skipped a generation. It was like dad and then my kids. And I don't know why I didn't get it. But you know, you need good rhythm to listen to music. When the rhythm gets off, then the music falls apart and then people don't really want to listen to it. And we have a name for that when there's no rhythm in it. It's called jazz music. And so we, oh, that's a low blow. Come on. Hey, it's all right. Jazz is good. I like it. I'm just saying it doesn't have rhythm. But, right, so rhythm's so important to music. I mean, it's vital to your life. I mean, if your heart gets out of rhythm, arrhythmia, it's out of rhythm, then you're facing some serious health stuff. Same is true for our spiritual life. We need healthy rhythm in our spiritual life. And I don't know if you ever realize this, but God has always been into rhythm. He's been about the idea of us creating a rhythm in our life. All the way back in Genesis 1 and 2 at the start of the Bible, story of creation. God creates, rest. He just had this rhythm to it. To the way that he worked and rested. And then as he starts to call his people, as we read throughout the Old Testament, he calls them into different rhythms of Sabbath, rest, starting your week, and of gathering bread, gathering manna in the morning, and of certain offerings to him. They had festivals, rhythms throughout the year. He was always inviting them into a certain pace and rhythm in their life. Then we get to Jesus' life, and we see he lives with this just incredible rhythm. I just want to keep learning from him because he's the busiest guy I know, but never burned out, never overwhelmed. Just had this rhythm of work, connect with people, connect with his God, rest. And so I love trying to learn from his rhythm as I read through the stories of his life. Then he invites us into that rhythm. One of my favorite promises of his that I come back to often is in Matthew 11. He says in the traditional translation, "Come to me when you are weary and burdened." When you are, by the way, not if. When you get weary and burdened, come to me. I want to give you rest. And I love how another translation puts it, says, I want to help you learn the unforced rhythms of grace. Maybe you grew up thinking of following Jesus as it's a to-do list, it's more pressure, it's more guilt. You got to get to church, you got to do this, you got to be in the Bible, and it just feels like pressure and to-dos. And I'm sorry if that's been your picture of faith, but more and more, I hope you can learn and discover in Jesus' life and who God is. It's about the unforced rhythms of grace. He wants to help us have a rhythm to our life, not just chaos, but one of grace. And so gathering together and even beginning our week is about that idea of trying to have a healthy rhythm. And if you think about it, if we want to get something into our rhythm, we need to prioritize it. I don't know if you've ever gotten done doing something and then you say, that was really fun. We should do that more often. I don't know if you say that phrase. I say that. We should do that more often. Every time I go and finally make time to go watch a sunset here in OB, I'm like, I really should make time to do that more often. Or when we have couples over, finally hang out with some people, we really should do this more often. And we should. And why don't we then? It's just not in our rhythm. We didn't prioritize it into that. And so we're meant to create these healthy kind of rhythms in our life. And that changes different times of the year. We're kicking into kind of fall, and I know in San Diego it's always summer, but it's actually about to get hotter, not cooler, but that's all right. Hopefully it'll pass quickly. But it is kind of back to school, and even if you don't have kids or have been long out of school, there's still, you'll see a rhythm in our town and in our culture, and some of the travel is done for people. Some people are getting back into rhythms and stuff, and so this is a great time to think about, what do you want the rhythm in your life to be now from September through the end of the year? It's different in the summer as it should be. So what is it going to be for you now? I'm always trying to work on my rhythm. I try to find a balance. I'm not perfect at it, but a daily rhythm of work, meetings, and then home time, family time, time with God. I'm glad I finally got it into my rhythm that it's become almost natural enough that I almost never miss it. I'm not always this disciplined, but I did get one thing into my rhythm pretty regularly, that almost 365 nights of the year, I spend time in the Bible, go on a prayer walk, and watch SportsCenter. So I just have it in there because those are, priorities for me. This is after the family's in bed, but just because, that's what works for me. So, but yeah, weekly rhythms. Of course, church, you're like, well, easy for you. You work here. You have to be here. No, back to when, before I did this, I was a software guy. And when I first got married, my wife and I had to decide, are we going to prioritize a rhythm of going to a church? We had to drive a little ways to ours, but we said, yeah, this is something we want to have in our rhythm. Then when we had kids, have to decide, we're still going to do this. It's harder now. We're going to do it. And we did. We wanted to keep it a priority. For us, by the way, we decided that we weren't ever going to have our kids in sports or activities that were on Sunday mornings. I'm not saying everybody has to pick that. I'm just saying you should be intentional about what you do want to prioritize and do it. And so that's what we decided to do. We just wanted to model for them. But you get to decide. You have to decide. And if you've ever heard of Stephen Covey, great business author, also a really passionate Jesus follower, so he writes a lot of great stuff. Never forget, one of the things he says is, the key is not to try to prioritize your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. Schedule your priorities. If you don't, by the way, someone else will. And so you get to choose. I know it doesn't always feel like it. No, the school tells me when I have to be where, and my job tells me. But you get to decide your priorities, and then you schedule those. So you may change what activities your kids are in. You may change what job you have. You get to choose. So you choose your priorities, and then you schedule those. And this is a great time of year to do that. And for you spiritually, because there's always 100 other things to be busy with, what is that for you? Is life group, will it be part of your regular rhythm? Will it be part of your rhythm to serve? You say, I always thought one day I should do a mission trip. I always thought I should join those guys at Outreach one day. Then you make time. And then as well as gathering together like this. And what if gathering weekly, because this is at the start of the week for us, that this is the place where you can give God your schedule for the week. Every time you're here, God, what do you want me to prioritize this week? Because I know each week can have different rhythms. What do you want this week to be about for me? And this is a place that you could do that. So it's about learning to schedule what our priorities are. It's a great thing, by the way, to model it. If you have kids, model for your kids, teach them about priorities, especially when it comes to spiritually. What are the things you want to be about? I'm thankful we've done that with our kids. I'm not saying we did it perfect. And I'm not saying, every kid ends up always sticking around in church. We're all stories of that. But there is something powerful to laying a foundation for it. It does give kids something to come back to, and I'm thankful for all of mine who are already gone at college, and Levi now all excited to find new churches where they're at. So part of it is modeling it for them. So part of it is let's put it into be intentional in our rhythm. But here's part of what we got to decide. If I really want to know what's my priority, is looking at what's the rhythm of my life, what's that revealing. And the reason why gathering together as a family of God is meant to be part of that. It's not some have to. Remember, it doesn't earn you brownie points with God. It's actually something He has for you. Something He has for you. He wants to refresh you and inspire you and refuel you and really equip you for the rest of the week. So let's be super clear. Sunday church gatherings aren't the end goal. This isn't the end goal of our faith. This is where we're equipped so we can go live out our faith the rest of the week. You think about for like football teams, I'm so glad the NFL's back. Amen, it's finally back. 2 weeks anyway, 2 Sundays from now. Then you'll have another obstacle to not coming to church because on the West Coast, the games are at 10 a.m. I don't get it. Anyway, in the NFL, you think about, they'll spend so much time in practice, so much time. And that is not the end goal. You don't go to practice to be there. The whole point all week and all these practices and film time and everything is to be equipped for game day, which for them is Sunday and Monday and now Thursday and almost every night of the week now, I guess, right? But for us, game day isn't Sunday. This is where you come to get equipped. Game day is the rest of the week. Monday morning's coming. So you go back to your life with your roommates or coworkers or neighbors or family members. And hopefully while you're here, you get equipped to do that, inspired to do that, so we can go live it out wherever else that we're at. And you can see that that's what they tried to do, is they wanted to be empowered and inspired by what they did. They devoted themselves to the teaching of the disciples, or of the apostles, so they could go live it out. That's what we try to make our messages about around here. Doing my best. We don't want it to just be interesting Bible trivia. That was interesting trivia. That was an interesting story. You can have little pieces of that. It's meant to be, how am I going to live that out this week? So we'll try to keep these as practical as we can. If you see, that's part of what they did. Fellowship was a huge part of it. So it wasn't just come in and leave. It's, I want to connect with other people. This is how we know, especially if you got to go all week long, and you're the only thing even close to a Jesus follower at your work or in your own home, and it gets lonely and it wears on you, and you come around here and I'm, okay, there's some other people in this journey with me, and the fellowship can strengthen us, give us some confidence, some comfort, somewhere to come when you had a great week and you need someone to celebrate with. Guess what God did? No one else in my life will understand this, but I know you'll be excited about it, right? As well as, man, it was a really hard week. I need people that can actually pray with me and listen and support and not judge me. So the fellowship's so important. And then you see the idea of breaking of bread, of praying together. Prayer is such a powerful reason of getting together. And so all these things can help us start our week, begin our week in the right direction. You think about the other things you do to start your week. If you do calendar planning, kind of mapping out the week and who's driving where or what stuff we have this week. You get the grocery shopping out of the way. Soon it might be kids' homework, getting the house clean. Why do we do all that on a Sunday? Because I want to be ready for my week. I want to just be equipped and set in the right direction. And hopefully that's what God's doing here in you as well. Equip you, set you on the right focus for the week. So that's part of what God wants to do in our gathering. And the other powerful thing, and I love this, think about the power of shared experiences in our life. Certainly, some of us, we all appreciate at some level alone time, and some of us like more alone time than others, depending on how you're wired. I love alone time too. There's a lot of great experiences you can have just by yourself, a lot of great solo experiences. But think about the power of shared experience I love going to concerts. It's just one of the things that I love to do. They're way too expensive now, but try to go once in a while. Just that shared experience, being there with everybody. I get chills sometimes when you can really hear everyone into it. There's the power of that, power of sports. Like I mentioned earlier, you end up high-fiving strangers, things like that. You even think about like watching sports on TV. Really, anyone can just watch it on TV at home, and it's cheaper and all that. So why are all the sports bars packed all the time? It's the shared experience of doing that together. Super Bowl parties. Even if you're just going for the commercials, you want to watch it with other people. It's a shared experience. Even movies. I know it's more common now to stream alone in your home. I'm thankful movie theaters are still open. I still like to go. It was cool this summer. Went and saw Top Gun in the theater. And right at the beginning, it comes up on the screen and it says, San Diego, California, Fighter Town, USA. And the whole crowd in the theater just cheered, like right when that came on. And I was sitting there thinking, I bet no other theater in the country this is happening, except one's in San Diego right now. That was a cool shared experience. I can clap on my couch at home, but then nobody's there, and then I just feel dumb. So shared experience. There's a shared experience that happens nearly every single night of the year in Ocean Beach. Actually, kind of a shared worship experience. And it's watching the sunset. You can go any night of the year, even cloudy ones. Go down to the Sunset Cliffs, the pier, and people are just lined up, all staring in the same direction. Sometimes even everyone's all quiet at the same moment with phones out, waiting to see the green flash, see if it's going to come. How many have seen the green flash? How many don't think it exists? It's made up. I agree. I think it's made up. I've never seen it. I'm sorry. I'm trying. I try. Everyone's like, there it was. Did you see it? I'm like, no, I didn't see it. I'll keep trying. I have faith. That's a cool I think that's a shared worship experience. Pretty cool, right? Everyone's actually worshiping creation, which I love. We get to know the Creator. I always want to connect that for people. So the power of shared experiences. I can experience God on my own, but it's multiplied when we do together. We read in that Acts 2, everyone got to be filled with awe. There's something about getting to have that multiplied together. So this is the real most common excuse that I hear from people who don't come, and maybe you hear this or have used it before, as I hear from people that I try to meet in the community all the time. Yeah, I don't need church. I mean, I'm good with God. I got a faith, but I just don't need church. I just connect with God on my own. You know, I love connecting with God out in the ocean. Here's my answer. I would say this. I'd say it's true. You don't need it. It's true. It doesn't get you into heaven. It's not making God love you more. And it's true. I like to connect with God alone too. I love going to the cliffs or pier or wherever in nature, just connecting with God alone. But I believe faith is just so much harder to live out only alone. Only alone. Certainly there's the individual aspect. But only alone. It just gets so hard. It gets lonely. Again, if you're the only Christ follower in your context, it gets lonely, gets discouraging. We have questions. I don't know about you. I get questions about the Bible. I have questions about what God's up to, why He lets things happen. I have different doubts. Can you imagine navigating those entirely alone? Well, you probably can, because a lot of us have done that. So you can do it alone. It just gets discouraging and lonely. We can start to feel lost. I mean, we had to feel some of that during kind of quarantine time. We couldn't gather. I don't know if that was hard for you spiritually. I thought it was harder spiritually. So I would say, yeah, I can experience God alone, and I do sometimes, but it's multiplied when I do it together. I can read the Bible alone, and I do, but I love talking about it in a life group. And I hear thoughts and perspectives that I've never heard. I learn so much in the groups that I'm in, listening to what everyone else has to share. I can sing alone. It doesn't sound very good. But I love the power of us doing it together. I love getting to hear all of you singing together. That's evangelist sitting up front, by the way. You can really hear it. It's powerful. By the way, recent studies were done. Singing out loud together literally releases endorphins into your brain and just gives you joy and happiness. So it's true at concerts and it's true at church. Just a little psychology thing for you. I can pray alone, and I do, but there's power to all agreeing and praying for the same things together, getting prayed over by our prayer team and hearing the power of that if you've never experienced that. So, yeah, you don't need church for a lot of the other reasons and that we sometimes have had. Instead, it's more about, why would I do it without? Why would I try to figure out the spiritual journey alone when I can know that there's other people in it with me? And I'll tell you, more than you realize, there are other people in this room that have a lot of the same doubts that you do, questions that you do, feel like they don't understand the Bible or God at a level, if you felt that, have things they're ashamed of in their past and nervous of other people to find out about. So whatever you feel most alone in, I know you're not. I don't know everyone's story, but of ones I've gotten over the years, I know you're not. There are other people. There are other marriages struggling here. There are other people afraid of things here. There are people with social anxiety. It takes a lot to even come here. So just as much as I could say, just want you to know you're not alone. So we can do it alone, but it becomes, why would I? And I think that's what God would say. He's not mad when you're not here. I think he's just sad knowing that we're missing out on something powerful that he has for us of gathering. So let me just show you just one last verse about this. So in book of Acts, you see they start out with this rhythm. And then just like for us, you can start motivated, but life gets hard. Other distractions start coming in and other reasons to not kind of stay in this rhythm of gathering. So we fast forward to near the end of the New Testament, and we see a letter written to the Hebrews. And we see that people haven't been really kind of gathering anymore. They got out of that habit. So this powerful, kind of beautiful challenge here. The author of Hebrews says, let us think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works. Doesn't that sound good? Let's motivate each other to acts of love and good works. I think our world needs that. How? It says, let us not neglect our meeting together. Let's don't neglect it, as some people do. But let's encourage one another, especially now that the day of his return is drawing near. Let's don't neglect meeting together, but let's gather together so God can do these things through us. I've told you a lot of reasons motivations not to come, but here's some reasons why I believe it's powerful, that this is a safe space. This gathering in our life groups, safe space for you to ask questions and wrestle with doubts and seek support. That it's a way to know that you're not alone on this spiritual journey, that lots of other people here are in it with you. A place to get a bigger vision of what God wants to do in your life and what he's up to in the world after hearing a whole week worth of bad news. To get to hear and remember the world isn't just falling apart. There's still a God who's still at work and doing things. It's meant to be a fun and life-giving place, a place where you can plug in to be a part of changing the world. That's what we'll talk about in a couple weeks with the Be the Church one. And as we get out of here, and here's, as we see in this verse, and here's one that I think I've rarely thought about in my life, that it's not just about you. Not just about you. Maybe you have a Sunday where you're like, yeah, God, I don't really need it today, and I'm good to go. I'm kind of tired today. I'll connect with you in other ways. And what if God's saying, I know, but there's someone there that I want you to connect with, right? What if it's like, but I want you to go motivate and inspire others to love and good deeds? And I pray hard that you get something out of it every time you're here. But maybe there are times that are more for you also. How are you going to spur someone else on? And so we could even get in the rhythm of praying before we come to church. I don't know, as you walk or bike or drive over, maybe you can pray, God, what do you want to do in me today? All right, I'm open to listening, challenge me, encourage me. What do you want to do through me? Who do you want me to see? Who do you want me to connect with when I'm there today? And then we show up with kind of this open heart and soul. God, what do you have your way? What do you want to do with me today? That's part of why we sang that song before this, make us more aware of your presence. And if you go all week long, and I know I've had some weeks where it's like, I don't know where you are, God. I haven't seen you and felt you this week. Maybe you've just felt a lot of defeat. Come somewhere where you can become more aware of its presence, where it can be multiplied. And I think we do that, my last challenge for you, just by when you are here, by just engaging. I mean, we try to create a lot of space. I know as people are first starting to come to church, like, hey, I just want to kind of slip quietly in the back and watch, be able to leave, not have to talk to people. Okay, we're not here. We're not going to pressure you and hound you. I mean, I want you to feel welcome, but we're not going to do it. You have space. Just kind of safely, quietly explore. But our hope is, our prayer is, if you decide to stick around, eventually you'll step out of that. And I talk to people like, hey, I've been kind of like 6 months here, but realize I haven't really met anybody yet. Yeah, reach out. We'd love to help you start to meet people. Life groups are a good place to do that, but we'll introduce you to people on a Sunday. So really look at God. What do you want to do in and through me? What do you want to do through the worship? You know, really paying attention to the songs, even if you're like, I don't really know those songs, but let those words, maybe it's God's promises. Maybe he had more for you in the songs even than he did in the sermon of words that he wanted you to hear. And just being intentional to really connect with him in that, to think about who do you want me to see, connect with other people, and even to be prayed over. We have an awesome prayer team every service, and it's powerful if you've never had that. So I just want you to know that God just has so much more for you to experience. Don't ever let it be some religious obligation. Be part of this. I can't wait to gather with my spiritual family. That's what empowers me to begin the week. And I pray that's what God's doing in us. So let's pray. Let's pray together. Lord God, we thank you so much that we don't